Good morning, everybody. I'm Darrell Steinberg. I'm President Pro Tem of the Senate, and I also represent the 6th Senate District here in Sacramento. And I want to begin by thanking the Sacramento Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce for hosting today's event. And I'm going to introduce the people behind me who are going to speak in a few moments, but I want to especially recognize my two colleagues, the joint authors of the bill we are about to present, Senators Ron Calderon and Senator Fran Pavley. And I will say from the outset that I asked these two leaders to jointly author this measure on purpose, because they are colleagues who work very, very well together, but sometimes come from a different place when it comes to how to resolve the balance and the issues that we are going to discuss here today. And the fact that they are together and jointly authoring this important bill, I think, speaks to the seriousness of what it is we intend to do. So let me give some context here. We have heard from Californians and California stakeholders and leaders for the last several months that there are three things that we need to do to begin getting California working again. Number one, we need to adopt a balanced budget on time to restore confidence in California. And of course, that is the main part of our work over the next weeks and months. Two, we need to invest and improve the education system in this state so California can continue to be home to the most skilled workers and finest universities in the world. And three, we need to eliminate duplicative, redundant regulations that don't serve a greater environmental or worker safety purpose, but merely slow down the process unnecessarily. On the first recommendation, my colleagues and I are poised to make the difficult but necessary decisions to produce a budget and to give people the choice and the vote to determine whether they want to extend the existing taxes for 5 years or cut another $12.5 billion. On the second recommendation relating to education, we will have more to say about this subject in the days ahead. But fundamentally, we are committed to a greater linkage between public education and the growth sectors of the economy so that education for young people, especially high school students, is more relevant. We're here today to talk about the third recommendation. And so I stand with business stakeholders, environmental leaders, and Senators Calderon and Pavley to present Senate Bill 366, legislation which will begin the appropriate public process to reform the state's regulatory system and expedite project permitting. And let me tell you the way we see this. There are a lot of opinions and ideas about California's regulatory environment. Our commitment here as senators and Senate Democrats is to say the following. We do not intend to weaken some of the most important environmental and workforce safety laws in the country. They are proud statutes and proud laws. But on the other hand, I believe we need to say loud and clear as Democrats that government needs to be more nimble. That the process of getting a permit to be able to start a business too often takes too long. There's too much duplication. There are too many agencies that, instead of working together, work consecutively so that a process which could be cut in half sometimes takes years. This bill and these bills, which I will have the senators describe in more detail in a moment, are intended to get at ensuring that government works more efficiently and in a more nimble fashion and in a more user-friendly fashion. California ought to be about reaching out and encouraging business, to come to this state. We ought to be about encouraging business to expand. We ought to be using the forces of government to help business owners comply with our good laws, but to do so in the most effective and efficient way possible. Let me turn it over to Senator Ron Calderon, and then Senator Pavley, and then we will hear from, again, leaders from both the business and environmental communities throughout California. Before this is done, because I know we do have a little presentation here in a minute, I think. Drum roll, please. Before this is over, we want to explain to the assembled press here and the media, what exactly do we mean? What are some of the examples of duplicative regulation that we think this effort can get at? And since, you know, a visual is always more important than the spoken word here, what you are looking at here is, I think the politicians ought to get in the photo shoot here. You're looking at 28,000 pages of regulation, the California Code of Regulation. 28,000 pages. I certainly have never waded through all of them. I can imagine what it's like for someone trying to start a business in California, trying to wade through that morass. Senator Calderon?
Thank you, Mr. President. Everything you said, I think, is music to our ears. We are at the Metro Chamber in Sacramento, and the Chamber of Commerce, I'm sure, is pretty happy about what we're about to present here. So, having said that, I want to explain a little bit about how we arrived here today. When the Loma Prieta earthquake struck the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Area back in 1989, the state moved with almost lightning speed to streamline that whole repair process. The legislature had to pass some emergency bipartisan legislation to eliminate a lot of the red tape and make it possible to get the Oakland Bay Bridge open again and tear down and replace the 880 freeway, which collapsed like a pancake, if you all recall. Hundreds of homes and businesses benefited as well after we repaired that bridge. Now, 22 years later, California faces a different calamity, not a natural disaster this time, but rather an economic tsunami, if you will, that's left our state awash in red ink, foreclosed homes, unemployed workers, and businesses that are struggling to stay afloat. One standard to judge a government is how it responds to the wide-scale catastrophes. Well, SB 366 provides a change in the regulatory and permitting process that we believe will reform a very cumbersome, duplicative, overlapping, inconsistent, and outdated process. It's even difficult to say it. It's so difficult. This, we anticipate, will not only greatly benefit businesses, but streamline government, saving money, saving time as the state grows, improves its infrastructures, and oversees the enforcement that protects our environment. The bill that I am co-authoring with Senator Pavley has two principal provisions. Provision 1 directs each state agency, other than the courts, to immediately institute a review of each agency's regulations in order to identify any bureaucratic logjam that slows or prevents the work required. The bill also directs agency secretaries to weed out any similar regulations between and among departments or boards and recommend changes that address those problems. Provision 2 allows any businesses to request a one-stop shop permit process affecting, for example, a business business, transportation and housing, natural resources, and the environmental protection. All will come under a single unified process to expedite permitting. There'll be no interagency inconsistencies or overlap. So once in place, this new streamlined process we anticipate will satisfy the concerns of economists and business leaders, who you'll hear from today, who are strong supporters of laws that protect worker safety, health, and the environment. I'm proud to be a part of this reform. It's consistent with the governor's aim to make government more efficient and less costly. Also, it will play a role in stimulating the economy, putting people back to work faster with less bureaucratic red tape. And let today be a very strong message to the business community in this state. We want you to stay here. We want you to grow and prosper here. We want you to be successful, and we want to work with you as a partner. Thank you all for being here today. And I'm going to now introduce my co-author on this important piece of legislation, Senator Fran Pavley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Fran Pavley. I represent Ventura County and LA counties. I chair the Natural Resources and Water Committee, and many of you know, obviously, that I've dedicated much of my career in public service to protecting our environment and to protecting our public health. And I wouldn't be standing here today if I didn't think we could do both: maintain a strong, healthy, vibrant economy and maintain a healthy environment as well. It's not mutually exclusive. So I look forward to working with Senator Calderon. We've had several sort of behind-the-scenes conversations on what is our real goal here today. And with this bill, I'm proud that President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg has asked me to join with Ron Calderon in a process that I think will not compromise our environmental standards that we hold so dear in our state on clean air and clean water and the health of our citizens, but help move a more business-friendly process through our system. I'm a former mayor and council member. We've done this all the time within city halls throughout California, and it's about time we do this in our state as well. I have to admit, perhaps not all regulations are needed, and some may be needlessly hurting our economic recovery. Just look at that stack. There must be some duplication or overlapping or inconsistent or conflicting or outdated regulations among these processes. SB 366 looks at these regulations, but it's important for me to point out again that this bill explicitly and directly maintains protections for environment, public health and welfare, and of course worker safety. We simply cannot throw out those kinds of protections, but we can make government smarter and more responsive. SB 366, the bill that I'm jointly authoring along with Senator Calderon, will direct each state agency to do a top-to-bottom review of the regulations and to propose changes to remove duplicative or outdated regulations. Public hearings will be held by these agencies and departments to solicit public comment, and agencies will also be directed to communicate with each other to make revisions and weed out any conflicting regulations between them. As Senator Calderon mentioned, this bill will also allow what I call a one-stop shopping approach to the permitting process. For example, perhaps in citing renewables, do we need multiple agencies looking at, in a spread-out time scale, each impact, perhaps to fish and game or to air quality or whatever it is? Can it be a more consolidated, streamlined approach? So what we're attempting in this bill is to create a streamlined permit review team comprised of the secretaries of the Business, Transportation and Housing Agency, the Natural Resources Agency, and Cal EPA. Their goal would be to streamline and consolidate, or to just simply coordinate the review by state agencies and to resolve any interagency overlap or inconsistency. Now, the goal of this is to, as an urgency measure, pass this bill through the process, go into effect in 60 days, and give our agencies 180 days to hold hearings and get stakeholder and public input in the process. They will issue a report to the legislature with their recommendations and adoptions. Then we'll put those into effect. I consider this a win-win opportunity. Streamline regulations where they make sense, but protect the environment and public health. Thank you very much, and thank you, Darrell Steinberg, for including me in this.
Thank you very much, Senator Pavley, and Senator Calderon for taking on this very important assignment. I now want to introduce our host today, Matt Mayhood, who is the President and CEO of the Sacramento Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, a good friend and somebody who is working very hard to help create job opportunities here in the greater Sacramento region. Matt, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Senator Steinberg. Good morning, and thank you to all of you who are with us today. I thought I'd start with a joke. What's 270 pounds? It's contained in 34 binders and weighs, or takes up 28,000 pages. Unfortunately, it's not really a joke. It's the state code of regulations. The Metro Chamber has spent the last several weeks meeting with Senator Steinberg's staff at his invitation to discover how state offices and departments can reduce duplicative regulations and streamline the regulatory process. We have brought in our members, many of whom are subject matter experts in their own particular industries, to inform the senator and his staff on the regulatory hurdles that are most inhibiting to jobs and business growth. We are grateful and encouraged by this opportunity to review our concerns with the senator and the action that he and his colleagues are taking. This process has created an ongoing dialogue where we can be very candid about our concerns and encourage solutions. One of the best solutions for improving the state's ongoing budget challenges is to get people back to work. When people work, everyone's cash register rings, even the state's treasury, with increased tax revenues. So we must create an environment that encourages businesses to invest, to grow, and to hire more Californians. The legislation that is being introduced today is a great first step in the right direction, and the Metro Chamber applauds the action that is being taken today. The state's budget crisis is the most important issue facing our region's fragile economy. The Metro Chamber is particularly concerned about the impact the deep cuts will have in the areas of economic development, healthcare, and higher education. We would like to work with Senator Steinberg and his colleagues to develop strategic reductions in those areas to minimize the harm to our region's fragile economy. The Metro Chamber is advocating for a balanced approach to real budget reform that includes structural changes in order to balance the budget. Real regulatory relief that will encourage business growth. And shared responsibility, which means that if the state implements real reform and real relief, the Metro Chamber will support the 5-year extension of the sales taxes and fees for another 5 years. Next Tuesday, on February 22nd, the Metro Chamber staff will be joined by 150 of our member volunteers, large, small, medium-sized businesses who are volunteering their time to take our message down the street, our message of reform, relief, and responsibility to the state capitol during our state legislative summit. We will actively communicate our balanced pro-jobs agenda throughout the halls of the state capitol. We look forward to our continued dialogue with Senator Steinberg and his colleagues to create a new and improved pro-jobs environment in our region and throughout the great state. It is time that we all come together, Republicans, Democrats, environmentalists, business, and labor. We must find common ground. We must all be willing to give and take, and we must solve this monumental challenge together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you for those very strong comments, Matt. The California League of Conservation Voters and the National Resource Defense Council and their leaders who are here with us today, Tom Adams and Annie Notoff, are passionate defenders of the environment. They are also proud problem solvers as well. We worked together on the landmark legislation, SB 375, which is a pro-jobs bill. and on the comprehensive controversial water package, which the legislature passed in 2009, which included a lot of important compromises and trade-offs. And they are here today to lend their voice. I'm very appreciative of that, Tom Adams and Annie Nuttall.
Thank you very much, Senator Steinberg. We're here today to support Senator Steinberg's leadership, and this is once again an effort that he's made to draw unexpected and diverse parties together behind a single cause. We very much appreciate his leadership on this, and we look forward to working with Senators Pavley and Calderon on this bill, which we support. The California League of Conservation. Oh, let me say one other thing. I don't think I've ever before been invited to be a guest here at the Metropolitan Chamber, but I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here. The California League of Conservation Voters supports government regulation for the protection of public health and the environment. And we worked very closely in the No on 23 campaign for Proposition 23 last November. As you know, there was an attack on California's clean energy regulations, and a coalition of business leaders, environmental groups, and labor union leaders came together to defend California's clean energy regulations because they create jobs as well as protect the environment. No on 23 won 62% of the California voters, including a majority of Republicans as well as independents and Democrats. No on 23 got more total votes than any candidate or any ballot measure in the United States in November of 2010, showing that Californians strongly support regulation when it's meaningful to protect public health and the environment, and when it can accomplish job creation and the economy. Protecting the environment and growing the economy go hand in hand. However, as supporters of government regulation, we also support an effort to eliminate duplicative, outdated, or archaic regulations, which is the subject of SB 366. And we very much welcome and appreciate the provisions of that bill which say that it cannot be misused to weaken protection for the environment or worker safety or public health. And we look forward to working with the authors on this bill to bring it to the governor's desk. Senator Steinberg, senators, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So let's get the authors up here, or the advocates, and let's. We'd be happy to stand for questions, and maybe why don't we do
the books? Yeah.
the traditional photo opportunity. What's that? Where are the pictures? So we want to talk about section 1010.100.1 for a moment here. No, not really. I think we should
That's small print.
Where would you begin, right?
I would need
Where would you begin? Right.
Very little of that. Very little of that is environmental.
Yeah.
That's 8.5.
8.5.
Is that 8 or 6?
It looks like, well, for
I
us,
think that's part of the problem. I can't read it.
Right. So we'd be happy to stand for questions.
Senator Steinberg, how far are you willing to go with this overture to address Republican concerns we've heard in the past about regulatory relief and to give Republican support to the bill?
Well, I know that the supposition out there is that all this is linked to the budget. We have not yet, gotten the list of negotiating parameters from our Republican colleagues. I know I'm going to be sitting with Senator Dutton today, and I hope that we can begin in earnest. Look, my message is simple. We are willing to talk about a lot of things, but I think within the following parameters. We are willing to talk about anything that improves California's fiscal condition going forward. We have a very short period of time, at least between now and March, because that's the time frame to get the question before the voters, giving them the choice to decide whether they want deeper cuts or not. But my message to, to Senator Dutton and the caucus as well is don't overreach. Let's talk about things that are central to fiscal stability and helping improve California's archaic budget structure. But, there's a fine line between, a negotiation and a discussion about items that are really central to the budget and a long laundry list. And, we'll see what comes forward. I want to say, though, that you look at this bill itself, and you ask the question, well, what does it really mean? And I would ask you to look at your press packets, because what most impressed me about sort of the background work done by my colleagues here and their staffs is 7 clear examples of duplicative regulation that don't weaken the environmental laws, but make it easier for businesses to comply with the law, but to get their permits and to get started sooner rather than later. Whether it's the issue of the dual jurisdiction of the water boards versus the air board on biofuels and water quality, whether it's the fact that there exist 2 diesel truck smog check programs in California, both which essentially do the same thing, whether it's the issue of energy transmission permitting and the alphabet soup of agencies that have to weigh in before a permit can be issued, whether it's the duplication involved in agricultural and municipal waste digesters permitting, whether it's the multiple training and certification requirements for employees in fuel system construction, maintenance, and testing field. These are the kinds of things that if we can eliminate the duplication, if we can make government more user-friendly, helping people and businesses comply with the law, instead of making it more difficult to comply with the law, we can make a real difference in growing jobs here in California. And so we'll see what happens over the next several weeks, but I can tell you this, regardless of what happens over the next several weeks, this is a measure and measures like it that we're going to push forward throughout the entire legislative session. Yeah, Tim.
In your remarks, you said that if this kind of reform is advanced, that the Metro Chamber would be willing to embrace the tax extension. Could you expand on that? And do you anticipate other chambers, other business organizations adopting the same position?
Currently, the Metro Chamber's position through our executive committee and the piece that we're carrying next week calls for reform and relief. And if we see real examples of that being carried out, this is an example of
Beyond
this and other things. And there's, we're going to push. We're going to push Senator Steinberg and his staff and the other legislators to think big. This is the time to make changes, to make California the great state that it used to be for businesses. Let's bring those businesses back to California. Let's do what's right to get Californians back to work. So as a Chamber of Commerce representing the interests of our members, small, medium, and large businesses, we're going to push. That's what we're here to do. We don't want to negatively impact environmental laws. We supported or opposed Prop 23. We supported SB 375. We're a very balanced Chamber of Commerce. But we want to see this regulatory reform happen in a timely manner. And if we start seeing the state and the legislature move in that direction, our board and our members are willing to support the extension of the sales tax and fees. And this has got to be a give and take. There, an additional $12 billion of cuts, folks, it's draconian. You look at the impacts of what that will happen to that state, to higher education, to healthcare, and to the industry clusters in the Sacramento region that make this region strong. We're very dependent upon healthcare and very dependent upon our higher education institutions. We start seeing government needs to provide a basic level of service, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to look at what we can do to have shared responsibility.
Does anyone have any sense of what the cost of these duplicative regulations have to the jobs or
I don't think anybody's done an economic analysis as to the cost of these regulations, but you know, for years and years and years, we've been passing additional regulations without taking old ones off the books. And I think the economic analysis could look at the number of jobs that have left the state of California, the number of businesses that have chosen not to locate in the state of California, that have not expanded here, that have chose to expand in Arizona or Texas or you know, or overseas. So, you know, I'm really pleased that we're all coming together and having this discussion, because this is what we need to do to get Californians back to work.
If you're a manufacturing plant, if I may, Matt, and you're trying to get permits, build your plant, get up and running, it could cost you literally millions, $3 to $7 million. And it's taking now 3 to 5 years to get these permits. And that's why it's costing so much, because it takes so much time.
Is there a target for how many pages you're looking to weed out, and who has the final say? Will the recommendations go back to the legislature in a package, or?
There are two options. I don't know how many pages. The work is ahead of us, but certainly we'd like to make a significant reduction in the right way, in the way we've just described. There are two options for finalizing these changes. One, the governor could issue emergency regulations, which is contemplated in the bill, regulations to revise the regulations, or we can come back to the legislature and we can statutorily make the change. And, you know, we're open to both options.
At least one Republican senator put out a release yesterday talking about his own plan for streamlining regulations, that sort of thing. To what extent do you guys see this as being a vehicle for a joint effort here, a bipartisan effort, or just pretty much where you're drawing the line?
Well, I mean, we always invite our Republican colleagues to work with us. But again, I think we made a very clear distinction here, an important distinction, between making government work better for business and for the people versus undermining the substance of a lot of the important environmental and workplace safety laws. By the way, as Mr. Adams said, laws in the energy field, for example, which are our best hope of creating increased high-wage job opportunities for Californians. And so, look at we're willing to engage our colleagues in a conversation, negotiation. We've got to get this budget done. We have to get these measures on the ballot for the reasons Mr. Mayhood said. But we think that this is the right construct. Let's make government work better for people and for business. Cool. I think it's appropriate. I think it's another important signal by the governor and the state government that we all recognize that in these times we have to tighten our belts. I think the governor has, over his first 6 weeks in office, demonstrated, you know, the right touch. He's put forward the right symbols, the right messages, and, you know, we all should be joining him to say, let's put California's fiscal crisis behind us. Let's give people the right to vote and the right to choose what direction we go. And let's focus on all the other positive things that we have to accomplish here in California. Creating a new high-wage economy, fixing outdated regulations, making our education system more relevant to the economy, implementing federal health care reform in the most cost-effective way possible. Hard to get to a lot of these things unless and until this behemoth known as the fiscal crisis is actually behind us. We've got a great opportunity here. We need to grab it. Thank you.
Matt, and maybe Senator Steinberg, have you guys talked at all about redevelopment as you guys chat? Because obviously downtown Sacramento's had a lot of benefit, and I know it's, you know, the Metro Chambers help work with projects in downtown.
Yeah.
Anything on that?
Well, redevelopment, I give you my opinion, and and Mr. Mayhood can come on up and do the same, of course. Look, I think local government needs a tool to help incentivize the right kind of development and to help the downtowns. I think redevelopment, in part because of this Proposition 22, sponsored by the League of California Cities several years ago, we have to eliminate redevelopment in order to recreate something better. Because otherwise we cannot get the $1.7 billion that is absolutely essential to prevent deeper cuts to education or to health care or to services for the developmentally disabled. And so we're very clear that we're going to move forward consistent with the governor's proposal. But then we want to work with the business community and the mayors throughout California to try to recreate something that focuses on affordable housing, that focuses on implementation of SB 375, that narrows the definition of blight and that makes the reforms that redevelopment needs. Thank you. All right, thank you all very much. Go, Matt, but you want to answer that?
Yeah, let me just say, as it relates to redevelopment and enterprise zones, we have a lot of members who are obviously very concerned about the complete elimination of those programs. Our economic development specialists, the cities, the counties, they need tools in order to help businesses grow, to stay here, and to attract businesses. So I think it gets to the senator's point about looking at enterprise zones, looking at redevelopment, and making sure there are reforms in place, that economic development, that city specialists at cities and counties have tools that they can use, because neighboring states, Texas, Arizona, other countries have a lot of tools in their toolbox to attract businesses. And we need those same type of tools. And redevelopment's been big in the city and county of Sacramento. You look at the rail yards, you look at the Bridge District, you look at Township 9, you look at McClellan Park and Mather Field and the redevelopment that's occurred there. None of that would have happened without enterprise zones and redevelopment. So we need to look at how those tools are used and look at reforms to make sure we have the proper economic development tools to move forward. Okay.
Matt, you said you need reform and relief in order to back the tax extensions. What above and beyond this bill does the chamber require?
Again, we're in continuing conversations with Senator Steinberg and other legislators. We're going to push for them to think big and move forward. We have specific asks that we're going to put forward to them, but I think it's too early to tell. I think this is the step in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.